October 10, 1943. Camp Papago Park, Arizona. Heat stutters off the desert floor in visible waves, making the distant guard towers shimmer like mirages. You can taste the dust fine, coppery, sticking to the tongue. A convoy of olive-drab trucks grinds across the crushed gravel, their canvas covers taut, their tailgates rattling with each dip in the washboard road. Inside, 24 German POWs sway shoulder to shoulder, caps askew, tunics salt-stained. The trucks brake, engines coughing, and a military policeman flicks his hand up, halt. Oberleutnant Franz Meyer, a signals officer with a thin scar across his cheek, steps down under the watchful eye of a GI with an M1 Garand cradled at his hip. Meyer squints toward the sun, scanning the perimeter fences, listening, always listening for the artery pulses of a base at work. He hears distant generator hum, a staccato clatter of typewriter keys, the clipped cadence of English orders, and somewhere, very faint, the high, nasal singing cadence of a spoken rhythm that doesn't fit his catalog of languages. He chalks it up to fatigue. Then, the escort snaps. Move. They file past a notice board peppered with base memos and a stenciled sign. Counterintelligence Corps authorized personnel only. Inside the processing hut, the air is cooler, heavy with the sweet solvent smell of mimeograph ink. A corporal hands out paper cups of lukewarm water from a galvanized dispenser. Officers are separated. Meyer goes left, enlisted men shuffle right. Tags are checked, personal effects inventory, wristwatches, fountain pens, half-smoked cigars wrapped in wax paper. A clerk, bored and efficient, takes Meyer's name in a ledger. Ink nib, skipping over the page. Sit, says the American lieutenant across the table, Robert Hale, sleeves rolled, cap set on the chair back. A stack of forms meticulously squared beside a field phone. A stenographer taps into action, carriage ringing at the end of each line. Behind Hale, a steel radio rack glows faintly, an SCR 299 set. Twin dials, a handset on a hook, cables looping like serpents into a junction box. On the table, ABC 611, handy-talkie, battered and painted with the ghost outline of a unit stencil, lies next to a sharpened pencil and a carton of Chesterfields. Hale leans forward. We're going to talk about your signal nets, Oberleutnant frequencies, schedules, call signs. Meyer sits rigidly, spine like a yardstick, hands folded neatly on the table. He stares at the radio, measuring its tubes, the tuning coils, the logic of the wiring. He calculates, as if numbers can temper the humiliation of capture. He begins in English crisp, formal, declining to answer. The room changes in small, precise ways. The stenographer looks up, the door opens, and two Marines step in, sweat drying on their foreheads, antennae rod cases slung over their shoulders. They wear headset bands looped around their necks, throat mics clipped to their collars. One carries a message pad with a rubber-banded stack of index cards. The taller one, a corporal with a square jaw and watchful eyes, nods to Hale and moves to the radio rack. You'll want this live, Hale says, to no one in particular. Then, to Meyer, with a sliver of smile. You're a signals man. You appreciate good listening. Meyer watches as the corporal flips the power toggle. The set warms and emits a low, steady hum. The second Marine adjusts his throat mic, presses the transmit key, and speaks not English, not French, not any Romance language into a fast, crisp braid of syllables, with hard edges and tonal breaks. Dadil Hill Shash, Tanez, the corporal replies, matching speed, hands ghosting over the dials, eyes flicking between meter, needle, and message pad. The cadence is military brevity code, acknowledgements, repeats, but the words are wrong. They are impossible. The hair on Meyer's arms lifts. He leans forward, despite himself. The stenographer pauses, listening. Hale's gaze goes razor sharp. He watches Meyer more than the radio. What language is that? Meyer hears his own voice, softer than intended. the clipped certainty of interrogation replaced by something close to unease. Hale doesn't answer. He lets the moment widen. The Marines keep at it, their voices threading the air with a choreography of sounds that Meyer cannot pin to the Indo-European tree he knows so well. Morse elements are embedded in the rhythm, directional Z carried on a melody his mind refuses to classify. Meyer clears his throat. "We catalog every enemy signal net," he says, a reflex of pride, the training surfacing. Every language in the theaters. That he shakes his head. That should not exist. Hale's pencil taps twice on the form. "You told your men native languages were dead," he says, not unkindly. "Museum pieces, folklore, a comfort for children. Isn't that right, Oberleutnant?" Meyer tries to hold the line. Silence is the professional's shield, but his eyes keep drifting to the index cards the Marine flips through. A constellation of terms, phonetic transliterations, code words paired with military nouns. The corporal speaks again, and now the message resolves into structure in Meyer's ears. "Enemy armor, 2, Valley North." Except it isn't those words. It is a lattice built upon unfamiliar roots, mapped into combat vocabulary with smooth precision. It is, unmistakably, a code that circles around his training like a hawk around a field mouse. He thinks of nights over the North Sea, headphones biting his temples, hunting raft chatter in a wash of static. He thinks of the London dialects they cracked, the Russian phrases they traced. He thinks of his lectures at the signals school where professors argued that the modern battlefield has erased old tongues, replaced them with standardized speech and repeatable patterns. He hears those voices in his head, and he feels them collapse under the weight of the radio's humming fact. Hale finally speaks. "Corporal, translate the last line." "For the stenographer, please." A short silence. Then the Marine slips into English, low and even. "2 enemy tanks, moving through the North Valley. Request artillery correction." Meyer's jaw tightens. His pupils dilate. The realization hits like a bucket of cold water. A language he discounted as extinct is now the living skeleton of a battlefield code. He looks for a handhold, some rationalization. He finds none. Hale leans back, folding his arms. "Tell me about your assumptions," he says, "and tell me where they misled you." On instinct, Meyer reaches for the edge of the table. He feels the grain under his fingertips, anchoring him to the room as the intellectual floor shifts. Outside, a dust devil spins across the yard, slapping grit against the window. Inside, a dead language breathes in, speaks in artillery fire. October 10th, 1943. The desert night settles over Camp Papago Park, the air cooling but still heavy with dust. Inside the interrogation hut, the hum of the SCR-299 radio continues, its tubes glowing faintly like embers in a stove. The Navajo Marines keep exchanging clipped bursts of syllables, their voices steady, unbroken, as if they are weaving a net across the air. Oberleutnant Franz Meyer cannot look away. His training as a signals officer tells him to dissect cadence, to break down phonemes, to map them against known linguistic families. Yet every attempt collapses. The words are alien, the rhythm unclear. He feels the same helplessness he once mocked in recruits who failed to distinguish Morse from static. Lieutenant Robert Hale leans forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Meyer. "You hear it, don't you? You know this isn't gibberish. It's a code, a living language." Meyer swallows hard. Impossible. Native tongues. They were cataloged, extinct, no operational use. His voice falters, betraying the crack in his certainty. The stenographer's fingers hover above the keys, waiting. Hale lets silence stretch, the kind that presses against the ribs. Then he gestures to the Marines. "Translate the last sequence." The corporal speaks in English now, his tone flat, professional. "Enemy artillery, 3 batteries, moving east. Request immediate counterfire." Meyer's breath catches. He knows the structure. He recognizes the tactical vocabulary. but the foundation beneath it is something his entire education denied. He feels the weight of humiliation, not just personal, but institutional. The Reich's intelligence machine, so proud of its catalogs and classifications, has missed an entire language alive and weaponized. Hale's voice cuts through. You see, Oberleutnant, your assumptions blinded you. You believed a people erased. Yet here they are, speaking a code your analysts cannot touch. Imagine what that does to your men when they realize their empire of knowledge has cracks. Meyer grips the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. He wants to protest, to reclaim authority, but the radio hum and the Marines' voices drown him. He feels the psychological trap, closing the realization that the enemy has drawn strength from something he thought extinct. Outside, the desert wind rattles the tin roof. Inside, Meyer's silence becomes the loudest sound in the room. The interrogation room at Camp Papago Park grows heavier with each passing minute. The hum of the radio is constant, like a heartbeat in the background. The Navajo Marines continue their exchange, voices weaving a rhythm that feels both ancient and modern, a living paradox. Oberleutnant Franz Meyer sits rigid, but inside his mind is unraveling. He remembers the lectures at the Signal School in Berlin, professors insisting that Native American languages were museum relics, unfit for modern warfare. He recalls the Reich's propaganda, which painted indigenous peoples as vanished or assimilated, and now, in this desert hut, those assumptions collapse in real time. Lieutenant Hale senses the shift. He doesn't press Meyer with direct questions. Instead, he lets the Marines' voices do the work. Each syllable is a hammer blow against Meyer's intellectual defenses. The stenographer watches, fascinated, as the German officer's composure erodes. Finally, Meyer speaks, his voice low, almost to himself. If this is true, then our intelligence is blind. Hale leans forward, seizing the moment. Your empire prides itself on catalogs, on knowing every language, every code, but you missed this. You underestimated a people you thought erased. That arrogance is your weakness. Meyer's eyes flicker with something Hale recognizes instantly: fear, not of death or captivity, but of ignorance. For a Cygnus officer, ignorance is the deepest wound. Outside, the desert wind howls against the tin roof, rattling it like distant artillery. Inside, Meyer realizes that the war is not just fought with tanks and planes, but with voices his Reich declared extinct, now resurrected as unbreakable codes. The silence that follows is not empty. It is filled with the weight of realization. The psychological turning point that will echo in interrogation reports for months to come. October 11th, 1943. Dawn breaks over Papago Park, the desert horizon painted in muted pinks and golds. The camp stirs awake, boots crunching gravel, bugle calls echoing faintly, the smell of coffee drifting from the mess hall. Inside the intelligence office, the interrogation report from the night before lies on Hale's desk, typed neatly, each line capturing the subtle collapse of Oberleutnant Franz Meyer's certainty. The stenographer's notes are precise. Subject expressed disbelief at existence of native language. Subject admitted German intelligence blind to code. Psychological impact severe. Hale reads the words slowly, knowing they will travel far beyond this desert camp. Reports like these are dispatched to Washington, to the Pentagon, to the Office of Naval Intelligence. They are proof not only of the code's effectiveness, but of its psychological power. The Germans had built their war machine on the premise of knowledge catalogs, classifications, linguistic mastery. And here, in the Arizona desert, that foundation cracked bait. Meanwhile, Meyer sits in the barracks, staring at the dust motes drifting in the morning light. His fellow officers whisper about the interrogation, about the strange language that sounded like no code they had ever heard. Some dismiss it as theater, a trick. But Meyer knows better. He heard the cadence, the structure, the unmistakable tactical vocabulary. He knows it was real. The realization spreads quietly among the people. In hushed conversations, they admit their shock that a people they believed erased now wielded a language as a weapon, unbreakable and alive. 4 men trained to believe in the Reich's supremacy of knowledge. It is a wound deeper than chains. Hell closes the file, satisfied. The Navajo Marines step out into the morning sun, their voices carrying across the yard in casual conversation. To them, it is simply their language spoken with pride, spoken with purpose. To the Germans, it is a ghost resurrected. A reminder that arrogance can blind even the most disciplined intelligence corps. The desert wind rises again, scattering grit across the compound. The war continues, elsewhere on beaches, in skies, across oceans, but here, in this camp, a different battle has been won. Not with bullets or bombs, but with words, once thought extinct, now reborn as the sharpest code of all.